Castle. I am a Deputy Treasurer and the Executive Director of the Office of Economic Empowerment.
Jean Larizio. I am the Chairman of the Alcoholic Beverages Control Commission.
So I'm Emily Kotonik, and I am the Director of Policy and Legislative Affairs.
My name is Kathleen Gossett, and my title is Associate General Counsel and Procurement Manager.
My name is Christina Medina. I'm an Associate General Counsel here at Treasury in the Legal Department.
I'm Shatia Sproul. I am the Senior Program Officer for the Office of Economic Empowerment at the State Treasury's Office.
I've been in the Treasurer's Office for over 5 years. I started working in the Treasurer's Office as the first Director of the Office of Economic Empowerment when Treasurer Goldberg took office. Let me tell you, I grew up in the Boston area. I grew up in Natick, Massachusetts, which is actually where I live now, and I attended Suffolk University, so right on Beacon Hill. And I started interning actually at the State House when I was an undergraduate student at Suffolk. I was a government major with a minor in communications. In addition to interning at the State House, I also did a semester in Washington, D.C., where I interned at CNN through their political unit. And that was a great experience. And I always tell people a lot of times when they're interning, you learn a lot about what you want to do and what you don't want to do. And one of the things I learned when I was at CNN was that I did not want to work in the press. I more enjoyed my experience in the public sector. So when I came back, I finished my bachelor's degree at Suffolk and then started working at the State House as a legislative aide right after graduation. I worked as a legislative aide in the State House for just under about 3 to 4 years, or 3.5 years. I was there during the Goodrich v. DPH decision when gay marriage became legal in Massachusetts. And then I recognized that I needed to get my graduate degree. So I knew I wanted to go back to DC. So I went to George Washington University to get my master's degree in public policy with a concentration in women's studies. While I was at George Washington, I also did a fellowship at a organization called Population Connection, and then continued to work in DC after graduation at Georgetown University Hospital in the government relations and development office at Georgetown University Hospital. I made the decision, though, a little bit after being at Georgetown for a little over a year, that I wanted to come back to Boston. And so I moved back here and started working in the State House again. I eventually started working in the State Senate as a budget director. And while I was a budget director in the Senate, I actually then got an offer one day to go be a chief of staff to one of the state representatives that I had interned with in college. I always tell people it's important to stay in contact with people that you work with, and so I was a chief of staff for the House Committee on Post Audit and Oversight for about 5 years. During all this time, I should tell you, I worked on a number of economic empowerment issues while I was in graduate school.
I went to Regis College, which was, at the time it was an all-women's college. It's in Weston, Massachusetts. It's since began admitting men. And then from there I went to Suffolk Law School. But before I started at Suffolk, I actually started working at the Suffolk Superior Criminal Clerk's Office in Boston. And I went to law school at nights while working at the clerk's office. So it was after graduation, I was still with the clerk's office. And from there, I was offered a position with the licensing board for the city of Boston as their general counsel. And that position later turned into an opportunity to become their executive secretary. I actually held 2 roles. When I joined the licensing board, there was an executive secretary that was working with the board who was pregnant. And so I was actually brought on to help in her absence during her maternity leave. And when she came back to work, she made the decision that she wanted to go part-time. So we essentially switched jobs, and I became executive secretary and she became part-time general counsel to the board. and she ultimately ended up going home full time. And so I took on both roles. So I was with the licensing board for over 17 years before before being offered the position I'm in now with the ABCC, before being appointed chairman of the ABCC. So I had worked a lot with the team at the ABCC prior to joining them in February of 2017.
I fell into state government right out of college. I started as a very low-level aide to a state senator, and I was immediately hooked. I loved it right from the start. And I did see that sort of the positions that I wanted to hold and what I really aspired to were going to require a higher degree. So I did choose to go to law school, always with the intent of returning to state government at some point. I graduated from law school. I took the bar. I expected to have this really glamorous and hard-hitting policy job. And I started as a low-level aide to a state senator, essentially full circle to where I had started. And I was, initially really disappointed. I had this law degree. I felt like I wasn't using it because I was doing a lot of constituent services work. But honestly, it was the best thing that could have happened to me, because by speaking with constituents, I really came to understand where their pressure points were and what issues they were facing on the ground level, and sort of where our government was doing a good job and where we maybe had some areas of opportunity. I also got to cold call a lot of people across state government to track down their requests. And in doing that, I built a very large network across state government, a lot of folks who I still keep in touch with today. I was also really disappointed about the committee that my state senator chaired. It was the state bonding committee. And again, I didn't think that was glamorous or exciting, but it turns out that public finance is really fun. And I got to work really closely with the treasurer's office at the time, and came to really love the treasurer's office, sort of everything, the broad variety of activities that it undertakes. So I loved my work. I ended up working up to the chief of staff role. But at that time, my husband and I decided to have a baby, and state government didn't provide any maternity leave. So I actually jumped ship and I went to a small lobbying firm that did offer some paid parental leave, and I thought would kind of provide a little bit of a better balance for my family. I was wrong about that. And I missed state government pretty immediately. And so when I saw an opportunity pop up in the treasurer's office, which is kind of where I wanted to be all along, and for such a fantastic treasurer, I jumped at the opportunity.
So I am now a lawyer, but I didn't start out in college and in high school thinking I was going to be a lawyer. I was very interested in science. I graduated college with a chemistry degree, and I got interested in law while working at the Boston Public Health Commission doing some legislative work. And there I sort of learned that there was an interaction between law and health. So that's what drew me to law school. At law school, I learned, wow, law is huge, and everything was interesting past public health. So I've worked, I started out working as a public defender in West Virginia, and then I moved back home to Boston, and I worked with more underrepresented populations in the mental health unit, and then in child and abuse and neglect work before coming to the Treasury. And I've been at the Treasury for just over a year now. It's been a great experience, and it's one of the best places I've worked.
I was a paralegal for a long time before I went to law school, and then my public service career began in law school when I entered for the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office. Then after graduation, I was hired by the Inspector General as part of a team of attorneys and investigators that were assembled to look into a Massachusetts drug lab scandal. That investigation lasted well over a year. And I remained with the IG for a few years. I also worked on investigations that primarily involve procurements, so municipal contracts and other investigations, specifically involving fraud, waste, and abuse in the expenditure of public funds. And then I landed at Treasury a little over 4 years ago as an associate general counsel. My job here is to give legal insight and guidance to our various departments under the direction of our general counsel.
I actually started out in banking and then ended up in education. I worked for a bank in Western Mass and Northern Connecticut. And then from there, I transferred into the education system, working for a couple different high schools in Springfield and Holyoke. And then I ended up being a program assistant for a grant that worked with high school students. So I was really into working with young people and being in the community and just being a resource to my friends, my family, and like anybody in between. And from there, I ended up at as a organizer for our SOAR MA pilot with the Office of Economic Empowerment. And that role really encompassed all of that stuff. So working in the community, meeting different people all the time, being a resource in the community, especially being a resource in Western Mass, in Springfield, where I was born and raised. It was really easy to talk to people about the program and talk about all of the great things we were doing at the Office of Economic Empowerment. And I felt like I was bringing resources to my community that I love. So it was just really a good fit for me. And then since then, I've been promoted to the senior program officer, where I oversee a couple more programs, and I take on some more leadership roles within the office. So it's been a pattern of growth and really just soaking up everything that I can learn.